You're here for a purpose.
Miss Hedy Lamarr.
Well, don't you like having him so attentive?
Love it. I've just been sitting here thinking that I'm the happiest girl in the world. That's my trouble. I'm such a fool. I go dreaming about the wrong things.
In 1933, an 18-year-old girl lay naked in a forest outside Prague, while a film crew rolled. The camera held on her face, not her body, as she performed what is widely considered the first female orgasm ever committed to non-pornographic film. The Pope denounced her. Mussolini demanded a private screening. Her father nearly disowned her. Her future husband, an Austrian arms dealer with ties to Mussolini and the Nazi regime, spent what would amount to roughly $6 million today trying to buy up every copy of the footage. He failed.
After all, you don't marry for fun. I didn't.
And the girl, Hedwig Eva Maria Kiesler, who the world would come to know as Hedy Lamarr, went on to become, arguably, the most misunderstood woman of the 20th century. Not because of orgasms and nudity, not because of the 6 marriages, the shoplifting charges, or the plastic surgery that eventually left her unrecognizable, but because while Hollywood was busy calling her the most beautiful woman in the world, she was sitting in her dressing room at MGM, hunched over a drafting table, quietly co-inventing the frequency-hopping technology that would one day make your Wi-Fi, your Bluetooth, and your GPS possible. If you only have 30 seconds, here's the bottom line of this video. Hedy Lamarr's secret was not her cheekbones, though they were extraordinary. It was the fact that she understood something most people never grasp. That beauty is an act of stillness, not effort. And that the real scandal of her life was never the provocations, or the men. It was that she was smarter than every roomful she walked into, and yet nobody believed it. Her center-parted dark waves single-handedly reversed a decade of platinum blonde worship in Hollywood. Her matte porcelain skin became the gold standard. And her infamous advice, any girl can be glamorous, all you have to do is stand still and look stupid, is still the most ruthlessly honest beauty tip anyone has ever given. But if you'd like a bit more of an explanation, follow me. Welcome. I'm Kira, and this is your beauty blueprint. I've spent a whole week researching, watching, and editing all things Hedy Lamarr to bring you her very essence and share the best of my findings. And I have to tell you, this one got under my skin. So what are the ingredients to this woman's singular, unrepeatable persona? A face so symmetrical, it inspired Disney's Snow White and DC Comics' Catwoman, verified, by the way, by Batman co-creator Bob Kane himself. A mind so restless, she once designed improved airplane wings for Howard Hughes by studying the fastest fish in the ocean and the fastest birds in the sky. A wardrobe philosophy built on architectural precision, nipped waists, bias-cut satin, a single strand of pearls, never more, and a personal life so turbulent it makes a telenovela look understated. 6 husbands, a fascist arms dealer, a wartime patent the US Navy rejected because they told her she'd be more useful selling kisses. So she did, raising the equivalent of $343 million in war bonds in 10 days. Including one night where she auctioned kisses at $25,000 each. We are surely going to break all of this down. And later in the video, I am going to recreate her signature look on myself. The dark waves, the porcelain skin, those devastating berry red lips, and walk you through exactly how you can find your own version of the Hedy Lamarr effect. Also, I designed a Hedy Lamarr inspired t-shirt just for us, so keep an eye out for the link in the description. Now, pour yourself a glass of Austrian white wine if you can, because our girl was Viennese to her bones. Settle into something comfortable, and let me take you back to the beginning. Here's a little backstory. Hedwig Eva Maria Kiesler was born on November 9th, 1914, in Vienna, which makes her a Scorpio, and if you know anything about Scorpios, you already understand about 60% of this story. Intensity, secrecy, transformation, and almost magnetic pull toward the taboo. Her biographer, Patrick Agan, noted that she believed every line of that sign's interpretation, and sure enough, she lived it. Her father, Emil, was a prominent bank director from a Galician Jewish family. He was the one who fed her curiosity, taking her on long walks through Vienna, explaining how streetcars worked, how printing presses operated, how machinery moved. Her mother, Gertrude, was a concert pianist from a well-connected Hungarian Jewish family who had actually converted to Catholicism and raised Hedy as a Christian. Gertrude's parenting style had a particular edge. She called her daughter an ugly weed, deliberately, to keep her grounded. Lamarr later said, "My mother always called me an ugly weed, so I never was aware of anything until I was older." Well, to be honest, I can absolutely relate. My parents never once gave me a single compliment, for better or for worse. How about you? Both of her parents were of Jewish descent, a fact so closely guarded that Lamarr's own children did not learn of their ancestry until after her death. She was an only child, privately tutored from age 4, fluent in 4 languages by 10. At 5, she took apart her music box to understand how it worked. At 12, she won a beauty contest in Vienna. By 16, she was in drama school, where Max Reinhardt reportedly called her the most beautiful woman in Europe. She forged a note from her mother to get hired as a script girl at a Viennese film studio, because of course she did. Then came Extasy. She was barely 18. The Czech-Austrian director Gustav Makati cast her as Eva, a sexually neglected young wife who takes a lover. The film shows her swimming nude in a lake, chasing a runaway horse through the forest without her clothes, and in a close-up that jolted 1933 audiences like an electric current, experiencing what appears to be orgasm, the camera holding tight on nothing but her face and her hands. Director Machete allegedly pricked her with a safety pin during that scene to get the reactive expression he wanted. She was only 18 years old. She later claimed she had no idea about the close-ups, but the cinematographer contradicted this, saying she knew exactly what the role required. Whatever the truth, the result was detonation. The Pope denounced the film. It was banned in Italy, though Mussolini reportedly demanded his own private copy. The US Hays Office refused it a seal of approval, and Hedwig Kiesler, overnight, became the Ecstasy Girl, a label that followed her like a shadow for the rest of her life. Within months, she married Fritz Mandl. He was 33, she was, still, 18. Mandl was the chairman of an Austrian ammunition factory, reputedly the 3rd richest man in Austria, an ally of Austrian fascism, and a supplier of arms to Mussolini and the Nazi regime. He was obsessed with her and with controlling the ecstasy damage. He spent the equivalent of $6 million modern dollars trying to buy every print of the film, but he failed to get the master copy. What he did succeed at was turning his young bride into a prisoner. She lived in a castle near the Czech border where he bugged the dining room, monitored her calls, controlled her allowance, and assigned servants to watch her every move. Can you even imagine what that must have felt like? I don't think I can. Hedy described it plainly. I was like a doll. I was like a thing, some object of art which had to be guarded and imprisoned, having no mind, no life of its own. But here's where the story turns. Mandl brought her to his business dinners with scientists and military technology professionals. He wanted a beautiful wife on his arm. What he got was a woman who was quietly absorbing every word about munitions design, torpedo guidance, and applied physics. She later said of Mandl, "He had the most amazing brain. There was nothing he did not know. Ask him a formula in chemistry and he would give it to you." She was learning. She was storing it. She would soon enough use it all. Now, stay with me here, because what happens next is where the story of the most beautiful woman in the world collides with the history of our modern technologies, and it is stranger than anything Hollywood could have scripted. If you're enjoying this, please like and subscribe. It genuinely helps this brand new channel reach more people who care about these stories. Well, meanwhile, in 1937, Hedy escaped. The details are disputed. She told a dramatic story involving a drugged maid in a stolen uniform, but historians think she likely just wore all her best jewelry to a dinner party and vanished into the night. Either way, she ended up in London, where she strategically booked herself onto the same New York-bound ocean liner as Louis B. Mayer, the head of MGM. By the time the SS Normandy docked, she had a 7-year studio contract at $500 a week. Mayer's wife suggested the name Lamarr, after the silent screen star Barbara Lamarr, to bury the Ecstasy Girl for good.
Can I, what do I do? Hedy? Can I?
Of course. That's my name.
Ah, that's a terrific name. That's a great name for a movie star. Hedy Lamarr. Yes. They don't make...
Sort of sounds right, like...
They don't have names like...
Formerly Hedy Lipschitz, I think.
Hollywood made her a star. In Algiers, her American debut opposite Charles Boyer, audiences reportedly gasped when her face first appeared on screen. Women across the country started parting their hair down the middle to look like her. Drugstores experienced a run on dark hair dye. Fashion historian Margaret J. Bailey documented that everybody, including starlets and established luminaries like Crawford and Joan Bennett, had changed their locks from blonde or brown to jet black. She single-handedly reversed the platinum blonde trend that Jean Harlow had set in motion. In fact, I have also just dyed my hair black from platinum too, and I now see how her impact has reached me, unbeknownst to me myself, through the years. The Lamarr center part, the dark waves, the tall silhouette, it all became the new template. And yet, MGM never knew what to do with her beyond putting her face on the poster. They cast her as the exotic beauty, the femme fatale, the ornamental wife. She made Boomtown with Clark Gable and Spencer Tracy.
Has he told you he was in love with you?
No, not in so many words, but there are certain times, being a woman, that I might easily believe he was. What's more, I'm going to get him, because he needs me.
Was luminous in Ziegfeld Girl alongside Judy Garland and Lana Turner, and played the exotic Tondelayo in White Cargo, delivering the immortal line,
I am Tondelayo.
Cecil B. DeMille's Samson and Delilah became one of the biggest box office hits of the 40s. She turned down both Laura and Gaslight, two films that became untouchable classics without her. After leaving MGM, she formed her own production company, and thus became one of the earliest female independent film producers in Hollywood. But here is the part that matters most, and the part that was buried for decades. In 1940, a German U-boat torpedoed the SS city of Benares, killing most of the 90 evacuee children on board. The news devastated Lamarr. At a dinner party hosted by MGM costume designer Adrian, one of her closest friends, she met George Antheil, an avant-garde composer known for a composition called Ballet Mécanique that used synchronized player pianos. Together, they devised a secret communication system for torpedo guidance that used frequency hopping. The transmitter and receiver would leap from frequency to frequency in a pattern synchronized by slotted paper rolls, like a player piano. The system used 88 different frequencies, one for each key on a piano. As mathematician Olga Paris-Ramaskevich put it, the order of frequency change is nothing but a piece of music played on a piano. They filed the patent in June 1941, and it was granted in August 1942. US patent number 2,292,387. The Navy rejected it, too cumbersome for a torpedo in the pre-transistor era. They told her she could serve the war effort better elsewhere. So she traveled to 16 cities in 10 days and raised roughly $25 million, the equivalent of $343 million today.
America's war bond campaign is in full swing, and it's not surprising to find that Hedy Lamarr is a bestseller. When this picture was taken at Newark, New Jersey, she told us that her record was $3.5 million worth to date. That surely entitles her to give the Churchill sign.
One night in particular, she sold $7 million worth at $25,000 per kiss. The patent expired in 1959 without earning her a cent. 3 years later, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, US Navy ships used torpedoes with frequency-hopping systems, based on the very concept she had invented. The technology she and Antheil envisioned is now conceptually foundational to Bluetooth, early Wi-Fi, GPS, and military satellite communications. A technology valued at roughly $30 billion. She received nothing. Now, before we get to the beauty breakdown and the recreation of her look, I need to tell you about what happened to her. Because this is where the story gets difficult, and it is also where it gets the most human. Hedy Lamarr married 6 times. Mandel was the first, the arms dealer, the golden cage. Then Jean Markey, a Hollywood screenwriter. A quick elopement to Mexico that lasted only 2 years. Then John Loder, a British actor, her longest marriage. 2 children, Denise and Anthony, but it too ended. Then a nightclub owner in Acapulco, a Texas oilman. And finally, her own divorce lawyer, which, if nothing else, is efficient. After that 6th divorce, she never married again. She once said, "I must quit marrying men who feel inferior to me. Somewhere there must be a man who could be my husband and not feel inferior. I need a superior, inferior man." If that is not the most Scorpio sentence ever constructed, I do not know what is. She also dated Howard Hughes, who actually respected her mind. He gave her access to his airplane factories and set up a small laboratory for her. He called her a genius. She returned the favor by designing improved airplane wing shapes based on studying the fastest fish and the fastest birds in nature. She also invented a light-up dog collar, a dissolvable cola cube she called one of my boo-boos, and kept drafting tables in both her home and her MGM dressing room, alongside a vast library of engineering books. "I can't explain," she said in a rare 1990 interview with Forbes. "I have an inventive mind. Inventions are easy for me to do." Her co-inventor, George Antheil, wrote, "The Hedy whom we know is not the Hedy you know. You know something which the MGM publicity department has, in all its cunning, dreamed up. There is no such Hedy. Hedy is very, very bright." And here is the tragedy of the whole thing. The same beauty that opened every door also sealed every exit. She began plastic surgery in her 40s, desperate to hold on to the face that had so long defined her. Breast enlargement, cheek lifts, lip injections with primitive materials, wax, industrial silicone, facelifts, nose work. Her son Anthony later said she had plastic surgery thinking it could revive her looks and her career, but it backfired and distorted her beauty. One bad operation to fix another bad operation. By the end, she refused to let even her own children see her face. She became a recluse in Florida, spending 6 or 7 hours a day on the telephone, but rarely seeing anyone in person. She was legally blind. She lived on SAG checks and Social Security, roughly $300 a month, while the technology she had helped birth was valued at billions. She was arrested twice for shoplifting, once in 1966 for $86 worth of merchandise at a department store with $14,000 in her purse, and once in 1991 for $21 worth of laxatives and eye drops at a Florida drugstore, legally blind and 76 years old. Neither arrest resulted in a conviction, of course. In 1997, she received the Electronic Frontier Foundation's Pioneer Award and the first Bowlby Gnass Spirit of Achievement Award, sometimes called the Oscars of Inventing. Her response to the news? It's about time. In 2014, 14 years after her death, she was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame. Germany, Austria, and Switzerland now celebrate Inventors' Day on November 9th, her birthday. She died at 85. Her son scattered part of her ashes in the Vienna woods, per her wishes, and the rest were interred at Vienna's Central Cemetery in 2014. Now, the part you have been waiting for, the practical beauty blueprint of Hedy Lamarr, and how to find your own version of it. Let us start with what made her face stop people mid-sentence. The hair was the architecture. Thick, jet black, impossibly glossy, styled in soft sculpted waves with a center part, her absolute trademark. Sidney Gilruff, MGM's legendary chief hairstylist, handled her styling, and the result was controlled, elegant, and symmetrical in a way that photographed, kind of like sculpture. When she debuted in Algiers, women brought photos of her to their salons across the country. Lamarr veils, snoods, and turbans swept the fashion world overnight. The skin was porcelain, matte, velvety, described in the period press as fascinatingly white-skinned. Her base was Max Factor pancake makeup, applied with a damp sponge for that flawless matte finish, the industry standard at MGM. She appeared in ads for both Max Factor and Maybelline, and by 1947 she was essentially the face of Maybelline. The brows were thick, high-arched, and slightly angular, a departure from the pencil-thin brows of the 30s, maintaining natural fullness and anticipating the full brow trend by entire 7 decades. The lips were deep, cool-toned reds, rich berry, muted wine, classic crimson, always velvety and matte, never glossy, applied with a lip brush for precision. Max Factor's color harmony system prescribed darker, cooler reds for brunettes with her complexion, and that is exactly what you see in every frame. The eyes were almond-shaped and subtly done, a thin upper lash line, generous mascara, neutral matte shadows, never overdone. The restraint was the point. Now, here's how to recreate it. Start with a matte, medium to full coverage foundation for an even porcelain finish, not dewy, always set with translucent powder. I use Narr's, I think it's the best today. Muted rose or peach blush on the apples of the cheeks, blended toward the temples. Narr's blush, called Orgasm, is the most famous one for achieving perfection in that area. For the brows, maintain fullness, do not over-thin. Use a pencil slightly darker than your natural color, sharpen the arch, follow your natural shape, but enhance the peak, and brush through with a spoolie. For the eyes, lay down a neutral matte base, beige, taupe, warm brown. Slightly deepen the crease, line the upper lash with a thin, elongating stroke and a subtle flick. Not a dramatic cat eye, generous black mascara on the upper lashes, light, if any, on the lower. Individual false lashes, if you want or even need extra fullness. For the lips, and this is where the look lives, choose a deep but cool-toned red, berry, wine, crimson, or classic cold red. Line with a matching or slightly darker pencil. Apply with a lip brush. Blot for a matte, velvety finish. If you want specific product names, MAC Russian Red will get you there. And the hair, clean center part, large smooth curls from a curling iron or hot rollers. Let them cool completely. Brush out with a boar bristle brush to form soft S-shaped waves. Serum for shine, certainly hairspray for hold. Hedy herself said, "I'd rather wear jewels in my hair than anywhere else. The face should have the advantage of this brilliance." Her clothing philosophy was tailored, intentional, deeply feminine, nipped waists, structured blouses, wide-legged trousers for day, bias-cut satin and silk charmeuse for evening, a single strand of pearls, or a sparkling brooch. But here is the real blueprint Hedy Lamarr offers, and it goes deeper than any product recommendation. She understood, with an almost philosophical clarity, that beauty operates as both weapon and prison simultaneously. She said, "When you see a very beautiful face, it's stunning, and you yourself become stupefied. So you project your own stupidity onto the person you're looking at. Think about that." She was arguing that the so-called stupidity of a beautiful woman is not hers at all. It is the viewer's, reflected back. She also said, "A man does not try to find out what is inside. He does not try to scratch the surface. If he did, he might find something much more beautiful than the shape of a nose or the color of an eye. And my face has been my misfortune. It has attracted 6 unsuccessful marriage partners. It has attracted all the wrong people into my boudoir. My face is a mask I can't remove. I must live with it. I curse it." Glamour is composure. That is what she did better than anyone. The center part, the dark waves, the porcelain skin, the cool red lips. It was all an architecture of restraint. She did not chase trends. She reversed them. She also said something that I think about often. Plain girls should have someone telling them they are beautiful. Sometimes this works miracles. Which is a beauty philosophy rooted not in product or technique, but in psychology, in the understanding that confidence is the actual mechanism. So what is the advice Hedy Lamarr leaves us? Perhaps it is this. She said, "I've never been satisfied. I've no sooner done one thing than I am seething inside me to do another thing." The woman who was too beautiful to be taken seriously as an inventor, and too brilliant to be satisfied as a movie star, spent her final decades alone in a Florida apartment, legally blind, her face altered beyond recognition by the surgeries she had chased to hold on to the very thing that had both made and unmade her simultaneously. And still, every time you connect to Wi-Fi, every time your Bluetooth syncs, every time your GPS recalculates, there she is. The frequency is still hopping, the signal is still out there. She once described herself to Merv Griffin with the kind of line that could only come from a Scorpio who had lived 6 marriages. One escape from a fascist, a rejected patent, a papal denunciation, and a career that never matched her mind. I'm a very simple, complicated person. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please leave a comment. I will read every single one. Beauty is a mystery, isn't it? I've queued up the next chapter for you here. I'll see you soon. Love, Kira. Now go create your own blueprint.